So you've got the basics down. You've got a uniform and web set, you haven't ruined your helmet cover with Sharpie marker, and you splurged a bit and got yourself a really nice lightweight rucksack. But your loadout still looks like this. You compare yourself to reference photos of units, and you're just missing the mark somehow. I think it's time we flex our skills and really dive into the impression. That's right, we're gonna take your loadout from Hollywood hero to an actual impression with the right details, fun add-ons, and period style reproductions that you can use to, again, elevate your loadout. It's detail time. Oh, and by the way, if you guys have any key details or things that you use for impressions that people should look out for and notice in reference photos, let me know in the comments below. I love kit details because that's truly what separates a basic bare bones grunt kit from an actual impression. And let's kick it off with one of my favorite pieces of all time, and that is the Claymore bag. One thing that you'll see a lot of soldiers carrying, sometimes it's worn around the shoulder or sometimes it's strapped to their ruck, is an M18A1 Claymore bag. I am surrounded by piles of gear, so it's gonna take me a minute to... Here we go, this beauty. Again, I stand by that statement. This is one of my favorite pieces to use for an impression. And while this one kind of looks the same as this one, which kind of looks the same as this one, all three of them have key differences. You see, this style is the one that you see on the market hands down most commonly. And this is almost identical in design to the M18A1 Claymore bag that was used in Vietnam, but there are a couple subtle differences. The first that you'll notice is these buttons right here. Now, it is hotly debated whether these buttons ever made it to Vietnam, but you'll notice they are what's called donut hole buttons, in that they have a hole in the center. Some would argue that these made it late in the war, but many just dismiss them outright. And truthfully, I still am not sure on the answer. I have not seen substantial evidence that says these did make it in the war, so to be safe, I go with the earlier style. Comparing the two side by side, and again, the profile is identical, but you'll also notice on the post-war example are zigzag stitches in the middle. These hold these cotton loops on the inside, which are used to organize Claymore-related materials, whereas on the original example, these aren't present at all. Now, there is an instruction manual in all of these, and they are pretty similar. You'll see them in some different colors, but sometimes they'll be this bright green, other times they'll be this kind of lighter gray. But the ones that were guaranteed used wartime can get pretty darn pricey, and there's more to look out for, which we'll get to in a second. So sometimes you want to use a post-war one because it's not only more readily available, but usually a lot cheaper and sometimes easily modifiable. Like in this example. This thing is beat to hell. Yeah, this is actually not a good modification example. My first year getting into the Vietnam impressions, I had a very cheap Claymore bag that I found. It was like 10 bucks. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna modify it to look like the ones in Vietnam. Because again, the profile's identical and it's extremely useful for carrying things, which we'll get into what I carry in a second. All I had to do was buy some flat top buttons and bam, there you go. The problem is, as you can see, as I was removing the old buttons, I wore through the material very, very quickly. And I did not take care of it or correctly modify it. I just bent them out and was able to kind of force them out of the fabric. Whereas drilling them properly may have yielded better results, or just JB welding over top, flattening it out, and painting it. But as you can see, this post-war example didn't fare too well in the long term. Granted, it did look very ratty when I first got it, but you typically don't want to do this. So again, going for an original example is hands down going to be the best option. But there's a catch. Take a look at the instruction manual. Right about here, you'll see a little guy in a helmet. There are modern examples that go back to this original design. Ones that came out within the last 5 years that have the flat button tops and no zigzag stitching in the middle. But what you'll notice, very key difference. It's hard to tell the other differences when they're not side by side, but this little guy with the helmet on, he's got camo on the modern version. It's kind of like an ACH with a cover on it or something. Not on the original examples very clearly because ACHs and covers didn't exist back then. Maybe in an alternate timeline, would we have won the war? All right, I'm yapping. But again, Claymore bags are fantastic pieces for not only carrying Claymores and extra ordnance, but carrying medical equipment or extra water. These pockets, believe it or not, on the inside, fit a 1-quart canteen beautifully. And that's why they're one of my favorites, because you can carry so much and put it in a period container. Now, I've yapped enough about the Claymore bags, and truthfully, I could yap a lot more. But there's another bag that was extremely commonly seen with soldiers. Some unit SOPs require them to carry it with them at all times. Others were a little more lax, and after certain events required them to carry them for sure. And that is the gas mask bag. Now, the gas mask bag was for the M17. The M17A1 gas mask bags did not get issued to troops over there, and there are police models and all that. We'll get into another video of gas masks if you guys want in the future, but the bags themselves only say M17. And these can be worn in a couple ways. Most of the time, you'll see them wrapped around the hip with the long belt here, and then again through the leg. And once you start noticing these in pictures, you can never unnotice them. You can definitely tell what units had requirements to carry these. I've heard stories of the 173rd who've used the gases to cover the area behind them as they were moving forward. And then when they had to go back through the area for whatever reason, they ended up having to walk through their own smoke and injuring a lot of their guys. So something like this was definitely SOP during certain time periods. If you know in the comments when exactly that was or what the actual story is, let me know. I'm curious. Again, I've only heard stories. Now, these things, in addition to carrying M17 gas masks, are fantastic for other accoutrements because the interior is padded. As long as you're getting one that says M17, you're gonna be good to go. All right, and while I do really want to get to some of the very small, fine details that you can do to elevate your impression, let's talk about something that every single guy in Vietnam carried, in one form or another. Again, I gotta get all these pieces together. Okay, that's Ordinance. Now, grenades were very commonly used in Vietnam, especially smoke grenades for signaling, fragmentation grenades, or signal flares. If you've ever done a mad minute under a parachute flare, you've lived. But these pieces are fantastic for elevating a kit. You can get some repros of these. There's those cheap ones that you see at surplus stores or online. And again, that's actually what one of these is, but I painted the body green. The top isn't too great, and I did a yellow stripe up top, but these are just things to help get some extra weight and extra authenticity to the look. But again, there are better options. And then there's, in my opinion, no better option than the M18 smoke grenades. These are things that I make myself for my own kits, and I definitely will be making more of these, so stay tuned on the website for these soon. I'd say in the next month or two. And then you've got things like signal flares. These are great to put on the back of your ruck, especially if you're one of the guys in your reenactment that would be using one of these. But they're really cool. They're shiny, they stand out, and they definitely make something look a little more researched if, of course, they're used in a realistic setting. Now that's all big booms and explosions and gases, but what about ammunition? 7 mags, being 6 in the web gear and 1 in the gun, is definitely not enough for those long jungle fights. That's why tons of guys carried bandoliers. Bandoliers are 7 pockets. 4, 5. Yeah, there are post-war examples with 6 pockets, but these initially came issued with all of the ammunition carried in stripper clips. Just so happens they are perfect fits for magazines and allowed guys to plus up on their ammunition in a very compact, I know I don't have magazines in here, but look at how small this thing gets, and comfortable way. Because again, you have a long strap that can be tied to shorten it like I've done here, and they're very available. Now, here's the thing. A lot of you guys commented on my last video about it, and I wanted to talk about it here. These almost became a primary way for guys to carry ammunition during the later stages of the war. It wasn't everybody, and it wasn't US Army doctrine, but you can see tons of photos of guys using these bandoliers in various ways, and foregoing most of their web gear. Gone are the days of M56 pouches. You're rocking one of these across the chest, one of these as a belt. I've seen guys modify it by sewing it onto their jackets. And as long as you've got that little black safety pin that it came with, you can wear it like a bra. The infamous bando bra is something that a ton of guys love to do, especially later war. Again, that 1969 to 1972 time frame. It's not everybody, and again, US Army doctrine was not that, but it's a cool addition, especially if you're going for the late war cowboy kit. There's something also really important to talk about that's a little more near and dear to the body, and those are patches. Everybody loves to see morale patches, and sometimes unit SSI and rank are interesting to talk about in LARP reenactment situations. Like again, never claim a rank you don't have. But again, if you're doing it in a reenactment setting and it's strictly for the flow of the event, then that can make sense. But still, there are some key things to know with patches like these. And you'll notice they're kind of frayed around the edge because these are cut edge patches. During the Vietnam War, cut edge was the primary style used. Only in the very, very tail ends, I believe, if not post-war entirely, did marrowed edge patches come into play. These are by far the most common, and they're characterized, again, by straight cut edges. You're not going to see thread going and wrapping the edge to protect it from fraying like this. And in some cases, you'll see in-country made patches. I'm going to show you a cool example of that in a second, but something I did want to mention is full color patches versus subdued. You see, bright color patches, especially for the bright yellow first cav, are a little bit of an easy target in the jungle. So around that 1967 to 68 timeframe, I believe, subdued patches became way more common. Some units, especially like the 173rd or again, even first cav, maintained the bright patches because it was a unit insignia. A lot of guys had the pride and didn't want to switch over. But even with both of those units, you'll see subdued versions showing up again around that 67-68 timeframe. This goes for anything from rank to SSI to name tapes. And speaking of, this is an example of a subdued name tape. Now there's three things that are really cool about this. This is just a US Army one, but this is an in-country made patch. Very clearly was the base material taken from an old uniform, and somewhere in Vietnam, the words US Army were stitched on. And what's even cooler is the angle that this sits on. You'll see in a ton of photos for the majority of the war, straight across name tapes. However, this one follows the contour of the pocket. This style was done, again, primarily in that 1967-1968 timeframe, but it wasn't carried through indefinitely. So even throughout the war, you can see straight across name tapes, but slanted ones like this are pretty darn unique and cool to see. So pay attention to your unit that you want to reenact or do an impression of and see how they have it done in certain years. But again, in-country made, that's awesome. And on the topic of wearables, especially ones that are in-country made or made for Vietnam, here are some things that I like to incorporate into my impressions. Some of them are boonie hats. This right here is my favorite boonie hat of all time. As you can see, I've worn this thing to hell. But this is a repro of an in-country made boonie hat. I believe it actually was made in Vietnam, just modern. And it has a short brim. This is a modification done to a lot of the long brim ones, but this just holds a close place to my heart. You can also see full jungle style boonie hats. This is a reproduction made by SOF. Again, if you remember the last video, the color of this isn't the best, but otherwise having this herringbone style of webbing going all around is a pretty nice detail that a lot of manufacturers fail to do right. But this is just an example and option. Boonie hats are great, especially for the later periods of the war or around base. But there's also little pieces of flavor and style that you can add. Some of them being triangle bandages. In John Striker Meyer books, you'll hear that they use these as belts, and I've done it before. This actually works. But this can also be used as a headband, a bandana, or a scarf. And these things are still made pretty commonly post-war. They come in little packages like this. Something I can just easily wipe the sweat off my face or tie around my head if I want some comfort under my helmet. But again, back to that scarf thing. And you'll find these with guys in Mike Force to airborne units to just guys looking for their own unit morale. And that's where units like the black scarves came into play. Or airborne guys tying parachute material around their necks. This is a very long piece, and I wouldn't necessarily wear just this for a scarf, probably cut it up and stitch it properly, but something like this can be worn around the neck, tucked into the uniform, kept out, and it's not only good for keeping some bugs and debris out of your neck and jacket, but again, are huge things to pizzazz up your kit. I'm gonna get to blades in a second, but I wanted to show you guys watches a little more closely, because in the last video, I kind of just talked about generic examples, but not every guy had a watch in Vietnam. However, a lot of guys would pick them up from the PX. Again, Rolex style were pretty common, but there were other versions available. These are a couple of options made by Broken Arrow Event. Unfortunately, these ones are no longer made. This was the Balex line, but there are other versions, again, available on that website that are designed by a reenactor for reenactors like you and me. They're inexpensive enough where if they get shot out or damaged, it's not the end of the world, and they're all made to mimic period style ones. Now, the last kind of mini wearable that I wanted to mention before we move on to blades is something like dog tags. Every guy in Vietnam had them. You can get them made very cheap. Broken Arrow Events makes them and will custom make them in the period style. But something like this is a great piece to add on. I've taped mine up not only so you can't see exactly what's written on it, I'm watching you stalkers, but also to keep them from jingling around. Okay, let's get to blades before we move on to those minute details that the keen eye will notice. There are so many options that Army guys had, including personal pocket knives, old ones sent from home, PX purchases, and more. But the common one that you'll see with, again, pretty much every guy out there is the M7 bayonet. The M7 bayonet was used in Vietnam to attach to the M16 and was in the M8 scabbard. These are getting a little more pricey nowadays, but you can still find them for decent deals here and there, sometimes separately. Scabbards are hands down cheaper than the knives, of course. But that's not the only long fighting style knife that you'll see. One that I'm really proud to have picked up is this. This is a K-Bar 1207. This is a knife that was designed by K-Bar and sold in the PXs over in Vietnam. I can't find any record of if they were sold here in the US as well, but this kind of piece is a common bringback. Guys would buy this and carry it around with them, or keep it on base, or just bring it home as a little memento. As you can see, whoever had this one last did a number on the blade, but it is shiny and beautiful. And in relatively decent condition considering its age. I actually do bring this to events with me and will use it once in a while. Not on anybody or anything, just, you know, cutting stuff around baits. But these are all big. What about a pocket knife? And this, my friends, is a Camillus knife. I cannot remember exactly what model this is, and I'll put it right below as I did with the last video, but these are fantastic little multi-tools. You've got knives, bottle openers, flathead screwdrivers, can openers. There are so many little tools packed into this one. It's like the Swiss Army knife of the US Army. And you can find these exactly in the same style from the 60s to the 80s. So you don't really need to fret which version you get, because they're all pretty much identical. But again, a period one is a cool way to go. And you can get these pretty cheap if you look hard enough. Now, what you'll notice is I wrap mine up in paracord because I do dummy cord this to myself. God forbid, I don't want to lose this one because I do use this at events. So paracord's an interesting topic because you'll see dummy cording a lot. You'll see things stringing up other things, holding your poncho up in the air, or tying a clothesline. I have a bag of paracord right here, and then I have one little scrap somewhere. Where is, here it is. Bet you can't even see it. I'm gonna do a close-up for you guys on this one especially. But a lot of guys will tend to use OD green paracord, and this is a great way to go if you're not looking at it really close. Because a common paracord that was used in Vietnam, and if you have a lightweight rucksack, you know this is what's cinching the pack down, is this style of paracord here with the black tick marks. There are modern reproductions, but if you look hard enough and can find some on some websites, you'll find bundles of this stuff for pretty cheap. And this is period vintage cord. It's a very minor detail, but for the eagle eye and those who really want to make sure their impression is as close as possible to the original equipment pieces that the guys used, this is a good way to go. Now, we have two more sections of this video. One is keeping yourself healthy, hygienic, and safe, and the other is utility. So equipment focused. And let's get to that one first, because there's only a couple minor things that help with an impression that I want to say that you see in a lot of pictures that I just want to highlight here. Some of that is rifle bore cleaner. There are different bottles and variants of this. This one is particularly dated 1968 and still full, you just can't hear it. But sometimes you'll see this again, tucked in the helmet band or just around a kit. Another thing is this oval carabiner snap link here. This, especially with airborne guys, is very common. It can be used for ropes, canteens especially, C-Rat cans, which that's something I'm gonna show you guys how to make in a future video, or just generically having hanging off your kit somewhere. Again, very popular with airborne guys. So if you can find one of these for a good price, definitely do it. Mine is a 72 dated example, so one that didn't make it over to Vietnam, but originals are even harder to find. And before we transfer to the other small things, part of surviving is keeping yourself hydrated. 2-quart canteen covers are a topic that we're going to cover again in a future video, but I wanted to highlight something. 2-quart canteen covers came out in around the 1967 timeframe, but the sharp angle of the flap here is a huge characteristic to look out for, as well as, of course, the date on the back. These will hold modern or period 2-quart canteens, no problem. This is a 68 dated Headwind one. 68 dated Ideal one. I think I have a Headwind one somewhere else. But if you can get one of these are fantastic for keeping yourself hydrated out in the field or adding to your overall impression. I typically will carry one of these around base with me because it's a really, really nice thing to have. So much water by you, and when you're pitching tents, this is a good way to stay in it. Now, okay, let's get to some of the really small details and some of my most favorite parts. What I'm pulling in front of me are small details, accoutrements that you do not need whatsoever, but are useful for impressions or making sure that at an event you're looking the part. The first is a period shaving kit. Some events will require you to have these, but this is a pocket one that is not only very small in a little leather case, but can be put together. Same thing with like these Gillette razor blades. Or what if you need to keep the bugs off of you? That's where you get something like this. I showed this in the last video as well, but this is an insect repellent bottle. This is a replica from More Militaria, and it's a pretty darn good one too. Pens like this, like the USGI Skillcraft pens, the post-war ones have 3 rings here. This is one solid ring for the period ones, and again, are made by Skillcraft for the US government. I found this out. If you buy these pens like this, you can fit modern cartridges into these, no problem. So those long brass tubes on the inside, you could swap them out if they run dry. And for keeping a lot of your personal effects safe, a chew hoy bag. These can be a dime a dozen sometimes. Not actually that cheap, but you can find big boxes of them. I love carrying things throughout the event in this because it keeps them very dry, and I know they'll at least be a little bit safe. And everybody, no matter what event you go to, loves to share the pictures at the end. So why not get yourself something like a Kodak Instamatic? This camera right here is an insanely popular item with GIs in the Vietnam time frame. Some of them, I believe, were sold at PXs, and they were very common items to bring from home or have sent over because they are compact, they work decently well, and at the time, they were dirt cheap. These are actually still pretty dirt cheap. I honestly think I got this one for like $10. But sometimes you won't find one that works. So let me show you an example that looks almost identical and does work. This is the Kodak Ektar. This is a film camera that looks almost identical. You can tell it's inspired by, and not a copycat design, but a little bit slimmer and period style yet modernly produced. And Kodak sells the film that you're gonna need for this. So something like this is a great way to take pictures at events, get them developed afterwards, and appreciate the authentic style that this gives. Again, it's not a perfect replica, but I would be totally fine seeing one of these in the field. I'm filming this after because I was hiding it. This is a POH toothbrush. It looks like the period style ones. I have it in this purple container because it kind of looks retro, but it's not necessarily period correct. I love toothbrushes. Brush your teeth out at events. You guys are stinky. So with that being said, thank you guys. There's a lot more coming in this Vietnam sphere. Stay tuned. This is The Gear Locker. See y'all in the next one.